If you've ever been in a toxic relationship, you know how awful they are. And healing from a toxic relationship is one of the hardest things you can ever do. It's not the same as healing from a normal breakup because the relationship was not the same as a normal relationship. Being in love while in a toxic relationship will have you doing some of the craziest things and have you being the weakest, craziest, most psychotic version of yourself, okay? They bring out the worst in you and they make you feel the worst about yourself. And somehow you're still addicted to them when they are done. So here are the fundamental steps I've walked my clients through over a period of weeks in coaching that have helped them overcome toxic relationship relapse. The first step that we go through is finding the wound, because the wound is the why. Why am I still attracted to them? Why am I still here? Why can I not let go, etc.? Understanding the wound is understanding that any type of addiction is essentially just a habit that we feel is now essential to our survival. We have this very primal instinct that we need to keep fighting for them or working for it, and it gets translated into phrases like, I can't live without them, they're the love of my life, they're my soulmate, they said they were going to be there forever. And because it is so primal and it feels so essential, we have no choice but to follow it and believe it. But it keeps us in this cycle of something that is also killing us at the same time. How could we be driven towards something that we feel like is essential towards our survival, but is actually completely the opposite? This is where we ask ourselves, why? Why am I still in this? Why am I addicted? Why do I miss them? Why do I still love them? Why am I still thinking about them? Even weeks, months, years later, sometimes we can still have these urges, these very primal instincts to want to reach out. The reason that primal instinct is triggered is the same for everybody with different details. It has inspired something within you that made you feel like you couldn't survive without them, which always comes from a lack of an essential emotional nutrient from childhood. Whether a mother or father wasn't present, you were made to feel worthless as a child, and now you're trying to redeem that in adulthood. Some instinctive urge to be good enough is triggered within us where we feel the need for redemption. It's so strong and so primal because as children, we need our parents to love us. If they do not love us, we do not survive. We need them to love us all throughout childhood. And a child doesn't have instincts enough to know how to handle their emotions, handle themselves. So all they can do is adapt their behavior to their guardians to make sure their guardians are pleased with them. And if their guardians are pleased with them, it ensures their sense of safety and survival. So depending on what kind of environment you grew up in and how well your guardians were able to adapt to your needs as a child, determines the type of relationship that you're likely going to be attracted to as an adult, because love for children equals survival, and it does not change when it gets into adulthood. As a child, you don't have a choice who your guardians are. So when we're children, we ignore red flags, we sweep our parents' bad behaviors under the rug, and we forgive them so easily because it doesn't matter. We don't have the luxury of holding grudges or resentment. But as adults, we are triggered enough with that survival instinct, we're going to do the same behaviors that we did as children because we feel like they are our only chance at survival. Understanding the foundations of the wound can help you identify your particular details and story. What made you attracted to this person that maybe correlates with either what you were missing from your childhood or what you were repeatedly told during your childhood or what you're trying to redeem from your childhood. If you're in a toxic relationship, the truth is you're not in love with that person, you're addicted to the behavior pattern. Toxic relationships are actually just a very selfish way for our inner child to feel worthy enough and good enough for love again. You'll find that if you actually get what you want, you might not even be attracted to the relationship anymore. And this is why a lot of people who have hero syndrome, they build someone up, build someone up, build someone up, and then as soon as that person is like good to go, they end up not liking that person anymore, or that person even leaves the relationship because it's no longer serving the old dysfunctional pattern, so they no longer align with each other. Unless you heal the pattern, you'll continually repeat that same dynamic because it's what you feel comfortable in, even though you're not satisfied with it. This is what brings us to step number 2. We're going to want to start separating our ideas from truth. There's a common quote that says, you don't love the person, you love the idea of that person. But we're going to take it a bit further here and say, it's not even that you love the idea of that person, You love the idea of yourself being loved by that person and the love you could receive from that person if they loved you the way that you needed. So what you're actually missing and what you're actually in love with is just the idea of how you could be loved or nurtured. It doesn't have anything to do with that person, because when you miss them, you miss how you feel or how they treated you at a specific time. Even if you feel like, well, they didn't give me anything, I did everything for them, what part of you was really gaining a lot of satisfaction from being the martyr, from being the hero, from being the person who gave everything and got nothing back? We forget that sometimes we have a little bit of a kink for giving and not receiving because we can have the moral high ground. And sometimes we have this kink because we were told we were selfish, or we don't deserve to receive, or it's just better to give and not get. And somehow we feel like that will eventually fulfill all of our needs because we should just feel good enough with giving. But that's not how relationships work. That's not how life works. We have to learn how to be good givers and good receivers. So even if you think that you are getting nothing out of it, there is something that you are receiving, because we do not stay in things where we do not receive some type of benefit. It just doesn't work like that. Toxic relationships also put us in a headspace where we start believing a lot of things that just aren't true or are extreme exaggerations of the truth. We start to think very little of ourselves, and we start to put the other person on a pedestal, or we start to be so gaslit and manipulated that reality becomes very warped, and we question our intuition, we question our intentions, we question their intentions and regular people's intentions, and everything starts to really get mismatched. So this is a time period where we really have to start separating fantasy from reality. And unfortunately, the longer that you've been in it and the more lies you've been told, the easier it is to believe even more ridiculous lies, because the lies help you get the dopamine hit that we talked about in step number 1, which is that primal instinct addiction cycle. And if you don't really know what I'm talking about, you can go to my first video that is relationship relapse, where when you are in a toxic relationship, you get triggered and your adrenaline and cortisol spikes. And when your adrenaline and cortisol spikes, you're in fight or flight. So when you stop arguing, or they say, I love you, forget about it, you get a feeling in your body. So every time you get triggered and come down, dopamine is released. You feel relaxed. When you are healing from a toxic relationship, the worse and worse it gets, you're just searching at that point for the You will kind of believe any lie, any story, because you just don't want to be triggered anymore. You're going to reach adrenal burnout. You start feeling exhausted, feeling tired. And so you don't even care anymore what the lie is. You're searching for the lie. So it's so much easier for them to manipulate you because they've prepped and primed you to be so vulnerable that you'll believe anything at that point. The thing is, when your adrenaline and cortisol is constantly spiking because they're doing crazier and crazier things and you get more and more exhausted, they will eventually stop lying to you. And it will become obvious and things will show up and you'll still be like, oh my God, why can't I leave this? You will start lying to yourself so that you can feel the because that is now how you've learned to regulate your nervous system. You can start to regulate your nervous system when it gets triggered in a healthy way by telling yourself what the truth is versus the lie. You're going to end up getting triggered by these things that actually aren't even reality, that you've been told, or you tell yourself like, I'm stupid, I'm worthless, it's my fault, and then you get triggered again and then you lie to yourself. So in order to stop that whole thing, stop that whole fantasy, we have to learn how to regulate our nervous system. To regulate your nervous system means to understand the mind and body connection and completely relax every muscle in the body. When every muscle in the body is relaxed, trauma cannot exist, because trauma is the psychological response to an event, not the event itself. And so if you are no longer psychologically responding to an event by way of your body reacting in a survival way, then you are not technically experiencing trauma. We want to be able to have this natural survival mechanism. It's what helps us get out of things alive. You do not want to get rid of this. You don't want to practice this when you're literally in survival situations, but you want to practice self-regulation when reality feels confusing, when you feel yourself panicking over something that isn't real, so that you can stay firm and grounded and think straight. Toxic relationships will rob you of your autonomy, forces you to rely on the other person to self-regulate. Instead of me being able to calm myself down, I am now needing to reach for that other person to have them either say sorry or to give me attention or to say it's going to be okay in order for me to feel that, again. We want to be able to take our autonomy back, and the way that we do that is by being able to self-regulate ourselves. We do that via yoga, journaling, taking walks, going to friends. We want to really start to source this internally, not externally, or else we are always going to be codependent on our outside environment to be okay in order for us to be okay. And that is where we lost our power in the first place. Chances are we didn't have a good gauge on how we regulated in our environment. And so we found someone who was able to regulate us at first, make us feel really good, and then they used that to their advantage and took advantage of us. Which leads us into one of the last steps we're going to talk about in this video, combining steps 2 and 3, which is the mind and the body, talking about the reticular activation system. So we're going to focus primarily on the brain. How do we understand and combine rewiring what we believe to be the truth versus making ourselves feel safe if we've been so misguided and misunderstood for a long time? Well, we just have to understand, just like any addiction cycle, is that what's repeated in the mind becomes a deep groove in the brain. And the longer it's repeated, the more it's repeated, the deeper that groove is. The thing is, the brain is very malleable and it can create new neural pathways at any time. It doesn't just stop developing at 25 years old. You can create new neural pathways at any time. Just like learning a new language, it takes time, repetition, consistency, and immersion. I say all this in a very straight to the point, scientific way to give you some hope that these things aren't just some ethereal, lost in the universe pain that you're going to experience for eternity. No, there are actual processes and solutions and very pragmatic ways that we can heal ourselves from pain. When you think about the reticular activation system, the RAS, that is what filters information through the brain. The brain literally doesn't understand what is reality versus not, because reality is subjective. Anything that you are feeding the brain, it will believe. In the beginning, if you're falling in love with someone, you associate them with your survival, you're going to take what they say pretty seriously. You're going to take it as truth, as reality, right? So if somebody was saying that you're dumb, that you're stupid, that you're worthless, that you need to do better, etc., that becomes the truth that our brain hears and becomes solidified. And then we repeat it, and then we repeat it, and then that groove becomes deeper and deeper and deeper until we embody it into ourselves and we start to become that person. Leaving a toxic relationship, becoming somebody they can no longer touch and they have never touched, means leaving behind the person that they created us to be, the person that we were when they met us. We don't want to go back to who we were before we met them, because that's what got us there in the first place. We need to literally grow into someone new, which means we need to put new information into our reticular activation system for it to repeat and build the new natural groove so that we can become someone else. Of course, this feels very difficult to a lot of people, because once you have embedded a truth within yourself, it's so resistant to change that, because the brain wants to be efficient. It doesn't want to just change its mind all the time. It wants to find the least path of resistance. So you have two sidewalks. One has a dumpster fire at the end, but it's completely free and clear. And the other one has a ton of snow that you now have to shovel out, shovel out, shovel out. Well, why would the brain look at these paths and go, yeah, I'm going to choose the path with the snow? No, it's going to go, I'm going to choose the free and clear path. But then I get burned at the end and burned at the end. And usually we do that until we get so burned that we are forced to choose the other path. Now that you know this information, you can choose to change paths without first getting so burned. Choosing the new path means stopping yourself when you're diving into the old belief system. So if you once had said, I'm so dumb, I'm so stupid, or you're doing behaviors that you don't like eating junk food, not exercising, or looking at profiles similar to your ex who was toxic, whatever it is, you have to consciously make the decision to do the opposite of those things. So instead of, I'm so stupid, I'm so dumb, it's, I'm a smart, as I can be and I'm getting smarter, right? You don't want to make it extreme like I'm Albert Einstein. You want to make it something believable, but opposite. Something that feeds you, something that makes you feel good, something that goes the direction that you want to go. There's no point in feeding your mind something that doesn't benefit you, that doesn't make you feel good. Even if you are stupid right now, like let's say you are really dumb right now, you can work on not being dumb. Okay, you can say, I'm getting smarter and smarter every day. I'm working on improving myself every day. Because even if you haven't, simply the thought of you saying it will start to transform the belief system that you have, and transforming the belief system that we have changes the actions that we do. A runner's not a runner until they run, but a runner can't run without shoes. And he doesn't get shoes unless he first thinks of the idea that, hey, maybe I might one day want to run. So it all can backtrack into the most microscopic system of belief. So even if it's hard, even if you're watching this right now, like, I would never say that stuff, I would never do that, that's stupid, blah, blah, blah. Even that belief system is what you can start with. Well, maybe one day I could change my belief system. Maybe one day I could start to think differently. Because the second that you think differently, you start to take your autonomy back. And once you take your autonomy back, you win. Another trap that we fall into in this process is thinking that crapping all over our ex or all over that other person and just reaffirming and talking about over and over and over again how crappy they were to us is going to help us get over it. But the thing is, all it does is feed that limiting belief system, because then what does it trigger? It triggers, well, what could I have done differently to make them stay? Or what did I do to deserve this? Or why am I like this? And then we pour shame and judgment. It's like kerosene on a fire, just gets lit back up again. We don't even want to pay attention to that right now. We don't even want to give energy to that right now, because you're already in the negative. Why are you thinking of more and more negative things? That's not going to help us climb out of the hole that we're in. We're not in a mentally strong enough place to even look at that stuff. We want to feed the part of us that can be strong enough to pull ourselves out of the darkness. And we can only be strong enough to pull ourselves out of the darkness when we start to reaffirm to ourselves that we are worthy, that we are working on ourselves, that we're not going to let anything get us down. It's not just affirmations, it's understanding that you're literally rewiring a neural pathway in your brain. And soon that old pathway where you used to hate on yourself and say negative things really starts to feel fuzzy. And eventually it starts to disappear, and then this becomes the new normal. Then it's just natural to say, of course I deserve the best. Of course I'm working on myself. Of course I get smarter and smarter every day. When you're in that spot, that's when you start to look at the way that you were treated before, look at the behaviors that you did before, and you start to think, oh my God, how was I ever there? How could I ever do that? Because I love myself so much now, and I'm so different now that I would never do those things. Being in this strong place is the only way that you can accurately look at that past, because you have changed yourself into a different person. This is a process that takes time, immersion, repetition, and perseverance. We need to surround ourselves not just with our own mindset of getting better, but this is where we do need the help of a therapist or a coach and a group and online resources that are going to inspire us, not just feed into the old toxicity that we were once doing. This is the part where you need reminders from friends to, whenever you start talking about your ex in maybe a negative way and blaming and avoiding accountability and just kind of spewing it out, that maybe it's redirected towards, okay, what am I doing for myself today that's showing I'm changing? What am I doing for myself today that's gonna build my future? Because what we're trying to do here is not just feed into how badly we were treated. We're trying to change ourselves so that we can become a person that they never touch again, that they could never level up to again. And on the other side of that, we also start to observe our own behaviors that weren't healthy and were sometimes toxic. And then we change those too, which, as a last bonus mindset shift, you have to be willing to let your old self die. So many of us have built up these identities over months, years, decades, where we've associated everything we've become with this person or with this lifestyle or who we were in order to be around them. Now I'm telling you, you have to become a new person, which sounds really difficult, scary, hard, confusing. How do I do that? How do I simply let go of who I used to be in order to become someone who I don't know yet? This is the part where a lot of people end up doing a lot of the work and then they go backwards. They're afraid to make the leap. They're afraid to let go of the old behavior patterns. They want to cling on to what got them here because they're afraid of what's on the other side. But you simply cannot change if nothing changes. You cannot take your old self with you where you want to go. Your old self wasn't good enough to get to where you're going, or else you would have been there. So are you able, willing, ready to let go of who you were so you can embrace who you can become? This is where having that one person who can push you, who can check you, who can help guide you through is always a good way to get through this time period. It does not last forever. It is just a limbo period. And what's waiting for you on the other side is so much more worthy than what you've been through. You don't know how good it gets to be for you. I hope that this video helped. If you feel like you're someone who needs that extra resource, that extra help, feel free to click the links below to join our Better Man membership, our men's group, or to inquire about one-on-one coaching. I'm happy to guide any man through this process. Let me know below any other videos that you want, what your results are, and I will see you in the next one.